So I'm here in the car park of the AXA Training Centre where I've just been hearing from Jurgen Klopp ahead of the big one this weekend. Liverpool against Manchester City in that crucial Premier League title clash at Anfield, and everybody looking forward to this game. And I got the impression from Jurgen Klopp that he very much is as well. I mean, he seemed really upbeat and energised ahead of this one, and I think that's interesting to note really, because we all know he's leaving the club at the end of this season, isn't he? He said he's running out of energy and he's tired, but since he's made that decision and made that public, I think he seemed less like that. I think there seemed to be a weight taken off his shoulders, and ahead of a massive game like this where he's going up against his big rival Pep Guardiola, and there's the Premier League titles on the line. I think he's really relishing this and knows that it could be his last opportunity to come up against Guardiola, or certainly in this circumstance where there's a title on the line as well. So he really did seem to be upbeat and really looking forward to what is a hugely important game at the weekend, and that it's great to see that in his demeanour, that he's relishing this test as much as anything, and no fear on the Liverpool side of things, that's for sure. He's just really excited about the challenge that lays ahead. Now, I'll get straight into the talking points, and there were quite a few. It was a really good press conference, this one. I thought Klopp seemed in great form, and I think the best place to start really is with the team news. Now, of course, the interesting one that came out of the game on Thursday was Konate being subbed off. Would he be fit for Manchester City or not? Now, Klopp played down the injury after the match. He said that Konate said if he'd run or had a sprint once more, that he maybe would have felt something and that would have caused an actual injury, and the hope was that he'd seen it off and got ahead of it by asking to be subbed off in that moment. But unfortunately we haven't got any news yet in terms of whether Konate has avoided injury completely or not. All Klopp had to say was that Liverpool is still waiting for scan results, and they'll have to see on that front whether Konate will be fit or not. So hopefully good news from that scan, and Konate will be available. I mean, you do wonder whether at times with team news around big games like this, the manager is thinking this is a little bit of mind games. You don't want to give your team away, because I think Konate is a guaranteed starter if he's fit, so maybe didn't want to give too much away. But we'll have to see how that one plays out and whether Konate makes the starting lineup, and you certainly hope so, because I think he's obviously an absolutely crucial player, isn't he, in terms of that high line, and against a brilliant City attack you'd really like to see him. A couple of other team news bits to clear up. He clarified that Joe Gomez hasn't got an injury. He was of course subbed off at half time at Sparta Prague, but there's no injury there. That was just a recognition of the fact he's got through a lot of minutes recently. And he also talked about Mo Salah, no problems in the aftermath of him coming back from his injury in a sub appearance, and says he's sharp and looking good. The big question of course is whether Mo Salah's fit to start this one, but we'll have to see whether he got enough minutes in the legs to justify a start, or whether Jurgen Klopp will be forced to use him from the bench. That's an interesting one. Now that clears up the team news, but there was still plenty more that Jurgen Klopp got into that I thought was really interesting today, and one of those was the Trent Alexander-Arnold comments, which you might have seen doing the rounds from an interview with 442 in the build-up to this game, where he suggested that Liverpool's trophies, because of the situation between them and the differences between them and Manchester City financially, that Liverpool's trophies they've won in this era under Jurgen Klopp have maybe meant more to supporters than Manchester City's. Now, of course, that prompted a response from the Manchester City side, Erling Haaland saying, well, look, maybe Trent Alexander-Arnold thinks that, but he doesn't know what his treble feels like, which is a fair enough comment, you have to say. But I thought Klopp was brilliant on this in terms of recognising the importance of football to supporters and how everybody loves their own club. And he talked about how Liverpool's a special club as well. And I've got a couple of quotes from what he said here. And he talked about Trent Alexander-Arnold specifically and said, look, he's born in Liverpool. He stood on the bins watching training before he played for the club. He played through all the youth teams. What would you think in that situation? One of our slogans, which I love, is "This means more," and it means more to us. We have no clue 100% what it means to other people, but what happens here means more to us. I thought it was a really good quote on basically the condition of being a fan, being a supporter of a football club, and the fact that Liverpool, it does mean more to them. Whether people want to tell Liverpool how they should feel around it, or tell Trent Alexander-Arnold he's wrong, Jurgen Klopp's not interested in that. He says at the end of the day, to Liverpool supporters, to this staff, to this group of players, it does mean more. And maybe that's an interesting sort of sideline going into Sunday's game in terms of Pep Guardiola, in terms of the style of football Manchester City play under him. It's kind of clinical, isn't it? Jurgen Klopp's football is very emotional, and the two going head to head have always produced great matches. So maybe we'll see another one, and maybe Trent Alexander-Arnold will hope that Liverpool can get the last laugh against Erling Haaland going into that one, and hope that he's justified in what he said, with a big atmosphere and a big celebration at the end at Anfield on Sunday. Now, a couple more quotes here from Jurgen Klopp that I want to get into as well. One of the questions he was asked about is this a title decider? Obviously things really tight between Liverpool and Manchester City at the moment. Arsenal definitely in the mix, but he was asked, because these two are the ones that most frequently go to head, is this the one that decides where the title goes? And unsurprisingly, or you won't be surprised to hear, he actually rejected that idea. He says, I don't think after any result anyone should open up bottles of champagne, but 3 points is massive, which is, I think, is a fair way to go into it. He knows that this is important. He doesn't want to hide away from that fact. But he also says that, look, Liverpool could lose this, couldn't they? They could draw this, and it won't really decide where the title goes. So there's a long way to go between now and the end of the season, regardless of the result on Sunday. Another thing I want to talk about as well is that he spoke about the Anfield factor. Now, typically, when these two sides have been in title races, the Anfield game has actually been the first of the two, and Liverpool have always had to go to Manchester City second in the season, which has always been difficult because the sides have always been really close. And he was asked about, can the atmosphere be a crucial factor in this? And he joked actually and referenced back to what Trent Alexander-Arnold said, or his comments in that, and said, am I allowed to say the atmosphere is second to none, or is anyone offended by that? And had a big smile on his face when he said that. I thought it was a really brilliant quote from him, and he's absolutely right that it would be important. And he said as well, actually acknowledged that, look, I don't need to ask the supporters. It'd be kind of embarrassing if I did to ask them to create an atmosphere on Sunday. We know that the Anfield atmosphere is going to be great, and Liverpool will absolutely hope that it can have a decisive influence in terms of how the result goes, because there's no getting away from the fact that this is a huge game, isn't it? Now, I'm looking forward to it. I think Jurgen Klopp was looking forward to it. I think every player who's involved, every journalist, anyone who's around the club, every supporter who's going to be there, anyone who's going to be watching it on telly is absolutely looking forward to this one. It's going to be a huge game, so very much excited about that one. So I'm going to wrap up my press conference review here and just ask if you can like and subscribe. It's always helpful. Let me know in the comments how you're feeling about Sunday's game as well, and I'll be back for my post-match review from Anfield, and hopefully we're talking about a very, very important win for Liverpool in the title race.